Hi everyone. Welcome to the second part of our look into transparent language. Today we're going to cover the rest of the Learning tab and then finish the other tabs. Let's get started.
Today we'll start where we left off, the Learning tab. In the last video we covered how to choose a language up here at the top, the top menu here at the right, the learning path and what the lessons look like, what happens when you mark lessons as completed, and how to set a goal. Today we're going to finish this page and then move on. Let's look at the Learned Vocab section here to the right. Because we had already completed the first lesson in this course, we have 5 vocabulary words from that lesson that are waiting to be reviewed. Because time has passed, transparent language is telling us that these vocabulary words are stale. Let's click the arrow where it says Refresh All to see what all of the options are. We have Refresh 10 Most Stale, which will cover your 10 oldest vocabulary words. Refresh 10 Random, which is a random selection. Refresh Selected Vocab, which allows you to choose which words you want to refresh. And again, Refresh All Vocab. I'm going to click on Refresh Selected Vocab as our example so we can see what it looks like. And now let's look at what this pop-up allows us to do. The more lessons you complete, the longer this vocabulary list will be. So this list might end up becoming quite long. This is why, at the top here, we are given various ways to filter what we see. Under Language, we can filter for terms with the English word only, with the French word only, or both. If we were to click on each of these, we would see that the list does not change because we are given both the French word and its English translation for each word. This should apply to the vast majority of your vocabulary terms, except perhaps for any vocabulary words you input yourself, which we'll look at in a bit. Moving on, Status allows you to choose between any vocabulary words, fresh words, or stale terms only. Let's just keep it on any, because all of our words are stale anyways. Next is Filter Term, which allows you to search for certain items. Let's search for the word thank you. As we're typing, whenever we have a letter that might need some type of accent mark, you may see a little pop-up that allows for accent marks to be clicked on. You may not always see this, however. In this case, we did not. Let's hit Enter or click the search option. This virtual keyboard is just an on-screen keyboard if you need to use it. We see below the only vocabulary term that matched our search, and we can click on this to study the term. If there were more terms listed here, you could select more to study them. Keep in mind, though, that if you attempt to do a new search for other items, it will not keep this vocabulary word selected to review. It will deselect it and start you over again. Back up here at the term search icon, we can see that X has replaced the search icon. Clicking on this will clear the search. Finally, the last limiting option is Has Sound, which includes the options doesn't matter, which means it won't filter by whether or not the vocabulary word has sound included, no English sound, no French sound, and no sound at all. If we click off of this and look down here at our vocabulary terms, we see that all the terms include both French sounds and English sounds except for the term French, which doesn't have the English sound. So, if we go back up to the Has Sound filter options and click No English Sound, French is the term that appears in the results. Let's go back up and click Doesn't Matter to get our original results back. Once we have selected the terms that we want to review, we can click Refresh up here at the top, and we will be taken to a page that looks like the lessons we saw in the first video. Let's try that now. You can click these check marks to select a word, or you can click the checkbox here to select all of them. Let's click Refresh. As we can see, this looks like the lessons that we saw before. The only difference is, here at the bottom, we have the option to archive or edit the vocabulary word. Let's look at the top left of this page, all the way up here, and click on this arrow to go back. And let's close this Learn Vocab section. Going back to the Learn Vocab box, we see two more options here in the corner of the box. Add New and Manage. Let's first click on Manage and see what we can do here. This looks a lot like the pop-up we just saw a minute ago when we were choosing which vocabulary words we wanted to review, but there are some differences. Up here at the top, instead of the option to refresh, we have the option to add new vocabulary words. We'll go over this in a bit. When we click the checkbox for a word, several options appear here. We have Edit, Archive, Delete, and Set Active. Edit allows you to change a variety of settings. We're going to go over this more when we add new vocabulary terms because that's going to be very similar. Archiving will remove the words from the list of what you can review, but it will not delete them entirely. Delete will remove the words entirely, but not permanently. And Set as Active will take an archived word out of the Archives section. Let's look back up here at the filters. The only thing that is different here than the previous pop-up is Status, which now has Any except deleted, Fresh or Stale, Fresh Only, Stale Only, Archived, and Deleted. Let's now close this Learn Vocab section. A pop-up appears asking us if we are sure that we want to close this section, and I am, so I'm going to click Yes. Back in the Learn Vocab section, let's now click on Add New. Here, we have the option to add a word and its translation. In this case, French is on this side and English is on this side. However, if we click this arrow that says Expand, we see quite a few more options. Because vocabulary words are stored and reviewed as flashcards, we have a section to add hints, a transliteration, another hint, and a comment. Below these, on both the French side here and the English side here, there are several more options. Once we either upload a sound or record a sound for the vocabulary word, we will have the option to play it, but we will also have the option, if we just type in a word, to enable text-to-speech, which will generate a sound based on the letters you have put in. We can also delete any sound that we maybe have saved to the word. These are not selected because we do not have a sound here and we don't have any words in the boxes. Finally, there is the option here and here on both sides to automatically translate. If you were to type in a French word here or an English word here, clicking on the translate option would automatically translate it for you. Let's try this. And over here, we can click on Translate, and we get the English translation, which is cat. Also, Alternative Answer down here enables you to provide more options for possible answers if a word doesn't just have one translation. Let's take a look a bit further down. Here, we have Add Vocab Item, where we can add another vocabulary item. We have Import Vocab Item, where we can add vocabulary terms from a file. Find Vocab Items, where you can add vocabulary words directly from sources that already exist. And finally, Choose Vocab Items from Text, which lets you search through a text and add terms from there. To the far right of the page, up here, we can upload an image to accompany the vocabulary word or search for a suitable image. At the very bottom row, we have some more options. If we had added multiple terms without providing their translations or their pronunciations, we could click Translate All to automatically translate them and Generate All Sounds to load auto-generated pronunciations. Keep in mind that it is best to check these translations and pronunciations. This is again a virtual keyboard, and this is where you can change the virtual keyboard language. Next is Auto Expand, and this just makes a small adjustment. When Auto Expand is off, as it is now, you have to click the Collapse and Expand option to show more menu items. However, if we click Yes to Auto Expand and we close this, all we have to do is click somewhere in here, and this will open up. Finally, you can increase or decrease the font size and change the color of the text. You can click Cancel here in the bottom right if you want to discard your changes, or click Finish and Add to save the vocabulary term to your list. Let's click Cancel. A pop-up asks to confirm if we want to discard what we did, so let's click Leave and Discard. Now, let's move to the practice section underneath vocabulary. We have 4 different types of exercises. We have listening, reading, speaking, and writing. Let's open this first one, preview it to take a look. When you open any of the practice items, you have to choose which section you want to pull from to learn. Keep in mind that these sections do not necessarily correspond to the sections and the lessons in the learning path. There are many sections and subsections to each of these practices. But when you finally click all the way through, the practice button is available to let you start the practice lesson. The practices will then open up like the lessons we saw in Part 1. Let's move on. We have now finished the Learning tab. So let's go to the top and move on to the Browsing tab. This page is all additional learning modules, and you can add them to the lesson path on the Learning tab if you want. I mentioned in Part 1 that lessons marked as complete and removed from the learning path could not be retrieved, but they can in fact be found here in Browse, as we can see here with the welcome lesson that we covered in the first video. For each section, we have a title, a short description, and some related keywords. But let's look to the right and click on the 3 dots, which we see at the end of each row. This drops down a 2-item menu which allows us to either add it to the learning path or mark it as learned. Let's move on by clicking this arrow here at the far right. And let's take a further look at this lesson. We see many of the same options, but near the bottom right is Review, which allows you to look through the lesson. To go back, we can't use the back button in the browser because that won't take us back correctly. So I'm just going to click on Categories here to go back to the Browse section. There is one more feature on this page, and that is the search function here. But otherwise, we have finished looking into the Browse tab. Let's go up to My Transcript here at the top, which is next. This generates a report that will display your progress in the language program. Here, at the top, you can choose the dates that you would like to view. If you click on this box of pre-chosen dates, which is automatically chosen for a month, we see a small pop-up, and you can choose preset ranges like today, yesterday, this week, this month, this year, last week, last month, last year, and all time. Or you can adjust the calendar to make a personal start date and an end date. Let's click off of this. Next, we select the known language, which is just the language being used to progress through the courses. In this case, it's English, so let's leave it at that. Next, we can change the learning language. In this case, we're just learning French, so we'll keep this selected. If we want to select more than one, but not all of them, we can hold down the Control or Command key on our keyboard and start clicking which ones we want. Let's now click Generate Report. Here we have a variety of metrics measuring our progress and our time on transparent language, including how much time we have spent on certain sections. If we look further down, we can expand the Assigned section, the Total Learned Vocab section, and the Other section, which will give us access to different metrics. Let's scroll back up. Looking to the right here, we have the options to print and save this page. Let's now go back to the menu and click on Resources. Here we have a relatively short page. These are additional language learning resources that are not lessons. There's a transparent language blog linked here on the left, which is specifically for the French language. Here's also a section for French word of the day. You can hear the vocabulary term spoken if you click on the speaker icon here. You can click on this arrow to see the previous day's word, or click on this calendar to choose a previous day. You also have the option to click View Example Sentence to see the word being used in a translated sentence. Again, you can click on the speaker icon to play it. Further below, we have additional links. We have the French Facebook community. We have the French language Twitter post from Transparent Language. We have YouTube. There's also a proficiency test, which measures how well you're doing. There's also a mobile app, samples of video-based language courses, and online e-resources, which, if we click on it, displays several ebooks and workbooks available to us. We have French Conversation Video Workbook, Essentials French Reader, French Intermediate Workbook 1, French Essentials V2E Workbook, French Essentials V3E Workbook, and Beginner's Guide to French. Let's close this. And let's scroll up. Now, let's look at the last tab, which is Kidspeak up here at the top. Kidspeak is very different from the rest of Transparent Language. It relies heavily on the fact that younger children making use of this database probably would benefit more from complete immersion into a new language rather than being taught in lessons like we see for the adult side of Transparent Language. Because of this, very little of Kidspeak is presented in the default user language, which is English in this case. The vast majority of it is presented in French, except for instructions that can be displayed and removed. Let's take a look at this and click on Kidspeak to get started. This is showing a little introduction, and soon we'll be taken to a menu. If you had your speakers on, this would be playing audio. Now we have a little menu. To the right, we have a big red question mark, which, when clicked on, displays instructions for the page. Let's click off of this for now. Next, we see the purple book and the arrow, which will download a workbook that accompanies these lessons and games. And finally, at the bottom, we have the exit door, which will remove you from Kidspeak and take you back to the rest of Transparent Language. Let's click on the red question mark again to see the directions for this home menu. We see a very short description of each section, but also a translation of what our guide of sorts has said. In this case, she says, "Let's have some fun." And the sections are play with the backpack, play with animals, play with happy birthday, play with the alphabet, play with numbers, and sing some songs. Each section will have a different theme, and clicking on any one of these named icons will take you to an entirely new section which will have several subsections and activities. Let's click off of this help and click on the backpack as our example. Again, we have several sections, each featuring different words depending on the theme, and we can see those by clicking on the red question mark. Let's click on Borrow Things for School as our example. Let's take a look. Immediately, we are launched into a game of sorts. Clicking on the red question mark again, we can see the instructions in English. In this case, clicking on this mouse character will allow you to hear the word. Up at the left-hand corner, we see the word, and when we're tasked with finding the item that corresponds to this word. If you find the right item, it will move and the game will continue. But let's take a look at our new menu. Reference, when we click on it, will take us to a vocabulary list with pictures. These vocabulary words correspond to the items that we saw in the game. Let's click this door to go back. Next is replay, which will start the game over. After that, we have levels. The game will change slightly and become more difficult as you progress through the levels. Currently, as indicated by this one blue dot here, we are on the first level. However, we can skip to level 2 by clicking on this second dot. As we can see, the activity has changed a little bit. Now, if we go back to levels and click again, we can progress to the third and final level of this game. And once again, it does change. Let's click on this question mark again. The next menu option is the house icon, which will take us to the main menu of the Kidspeak program. However, if we don't want to go back that far, we'll just click the yellow exit door until we go back as far as we want. If we click exit all the way back at the main menu, it will let us exit Kidspeak. Let's do this. And one final click. We are placed automatically in Resources because this is where we last were before we clicked on Kidspeak. But let's go back to the home page by clicking on the Learning tab. And let's briefly recap. Today we covered the Learn Vocab section over here on the right and the Practice section further down on the Learning tab. After that, we looked at the Browse tab, the My Transcript section, Resources, and Kidspeak. This concludes our look into transparent language.
Again, thank you all for watching. If you have any comments or questions or suggestions for the next video, please leave them in the comments below or give us a call. See you next time. Bye.